is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding.
This is part 4 of the Craftsman 1/3 horsepower grinder rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 3, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will be finishing the assembly. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Continuing where we left off in part 3, we're just cleaning up the switch here. I'm using CRC electrical contact cleaner and a toothbrush to clean it up. Next, we're going to clean up the decal on the band, and for this we're using the Meguiar's cleaner wax. And we'll just spread this on the decal and then let it sit for about 15 minutes. Then we'll come back and buff it off. So after 15 minutes, come back and buff it off. And this stuff does a great job of cleaning up graphics like this. It won't hurt the paint. So there we go. So for the gooseneck, you've got 2 inner lock washers. One gets slid on the gooseneck first, and then the gooseneck is inserted into the band. And while I do my balancing act here, then the second inner lock washer gets inserted onto the gooseneck. These 2 lock washers effectively wedge the gooseneck onto the band. Get it past that piece of tape that it's hung up on. And then we have the nut. And maybe it wasn't a great idea to put the terminals on first. It probably would have been easier to just do all this and then put the terminals on, but it is what it is. So we'll go ahead and get that nut started by hand. And then we'll tighten that down with a wrench. I think it's a 9/16. And once we've got that nice and tight, we can install the switch next. So it snaps in from the outside. And you've got the 3 terminal connectors on there. kind of two on the back side of the switch and then one that hangs down. You want that one that hangs down to hang towards the bottom of the band, like so. Then we can install the band on the grinder. And it's going to have 4 screws that lock it into place. And those screws are screwing into those spring clips that we installed on each one of the end frames. All right, we'll bend the gooseneck out of the way so we can set this upside down. And now we can finish the wiring. So here again is the wiring diagram. So we have a black wire coming from the power cord, and that is going to the number 3 terminal on the switch. Now the switch terminals were not actually marked like the relay terminals were, so I numbered them the way I numbered them, and the diagram shows them as I numbered them. Then we've got the white wire coming from the stator that's going to go to switch terminal 1. And that gives us a black wire coming from the lamp that goes to switch terminal 2. And then the other black wire coming from the lamp is going to go to relay terminal 1, I believe. It's the only one you got left, so should be terminal 1. And that should complete all of the wiring. So we'll put the base cover on, and you'll see there's 2 protrusions on the left side that does not have that extra spring clip, and the cover slips under them right there. And then we've got on the right side, you got that spring clip in there, so you put a screw in it. I guess technically that's the left side because we're upside down right now, but you get what I'm saying. Then we can install the rubber isolator feet. Again, I got these at Lowe's. They're like $1.50 a piece. Maybe not even that much. And they fit perfectly. Now it's time to check our work. Let's put a light bulb in there, and then let's plug this thing in. Make sure it's turned off. Nothing happens. So we can turn the switch off and then switch the grinder on and then put power to it. And it is spinning and the light is on. Make sure we're not going to shock ourselves. Everything appears to be working correctly. All right, so we can continue with assembly. So I'm just using some 3-in-1 household oil around the shaft for the rotor. You've got that felt washer in there, and it'll get kind of grabby if it doesn't have any oil on it. And then we're installing the wheel cover. And I could have used 5W30 on that, but the 3-in-1 oil, no big deal. So the wheel cover has 3 screws for it. And you can see how it's kind of canted up a little. That's how it's supposed to be oriented. So after we got that tightened down, next we can install the inner flange and then the wheel with the bushing. This is a 60 grit, and then the outer flange, and then the left-hand threaded nut, which I tried to put on turning right, but yeah. And we'll do the same thing for the right side. Put some more of that 3-in-1 oil on there. Just enough to get down in there and get on that felt washer. And then the wheel guard, cant it, 3 screws. Then we've got the inner flange. And the wheel with the bushing. And that one's 100 grit. And then the outer flange. And then the right hand threaded nut. Next, we're just going to tighten down each one of these nuts by holding the wheel and then tightening the nut. And now we can install the wheel covers. There's 3 screws for each one of these. I do like this paint. It's got a nice look to it. Then we'll do the same for the right, the right side. All right. So I cut down the spark arresters, and here I'm actually installing the hardware on them incorrectly. I've got the nut on the inside, and the nut actually needs to be on the outside, but I correct it later on. But I cut down these spark arresters because they were really tall. I mean, it kept interfering with my fabricated eye shields that you see. Those are the ones that I was talking about where I changed up how I how I made them. So that was the old design sitting there. But after the spark arresters are installed, we install the tool rest, and they get a screw, and then the tool rest goes on, and then trying to figure out which one goes there. Then they get a washer and then the thumb screw. And don't worry about those eye shields. We're not installing eye shields yet. So next we can install the lampshade. And why that screw enters from the left side is unknown to me, because you got to be left-handed to use that screwdriver in that hand. It's crazy. So once we've got that locked down, then we can go ahead and install the lampshade cover. Now, the screw that you use to connect this cover needs to be no longer than 1/4 of an inch. If it's any longer than that, it's going to punch through the top of that lampshade cover. And those are like made out of unobtainium. Trying to find those things are like impossible. So just make sure you're using a 1/4 inch long screw. I think it's like an 8/32 thread. You have to look at the parts diagram to tell. And then you've got the light bulb, and I always use an LED. And we'll bend that kind of where it needs to go. So these are the correct eye shields that we made. And I'm connecting them with the original screws. And I've got a washer that sits between the eye shield and the grinder on each side. And then one more washer on the outside, and then the thumb screw. We do that for both sides. And those worked out perfectly. Very happy with how those turned out. So this is where I said that I installed the hardware on the spark arresters incorrectly. So I'm just pulling those back out, flipping the hardware on them. And the reason why is there's a lock nut or a lock washer on that screw side, and it locks into the inside there so that you can turn the nut on the outside and it won't just spin. And then I'm using an 1/8 inch piece of steel to properly gap those spark arresters. And I'll do that for both sides so that the nuts are on the outside. And that'll make adjusting them easier in the future. And that finishes up the grinder. So this is what we started with. Wasn't in too bad a shape, but yeah. So this was a fun little project to work on. I like it when I've got to do some fabrication to fix missing parts or whatever. It's always interesting for me, at least. And this is the finished product, and I'm very happy with it. So this will be going to my brother along with the drill press that we just finished rebuilding. And it works like a charm. Who knows? Maybe he'll end up with an entire shop of 1970s Craftsman tools. But that's going to wrap up this series. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. As always, I appreciate all the support, and I will see you next time.